What's going on, everybody? This is Chris K at Burning the Red Shirt here with, as usual, Andrew P. Katz. This week's guest, a familiar face in the industry and a popping, budding star of CFF in the last couple of years, a youngin', but a favorite of ours to bring on or chat with is Jared Palmgren from Campus2Canton. What's up, man? How's it going? I'm happy to be flipping sides of the table here with this conversation.
It's always weird being the guest and not the host. I'm not gonna lie. Like, I am so used to, like, as soon as you're like, all right, let's get started recording, I'm like, alrighty, let me do the intro. And I'm like, wait a minute, not my job for once. It's going great.
If you feel the need to go off on the spiel, just do it, dude. Just
it's all good. I got it pushed down. It's all good. We're good.
If you need to talk home field, just go for it. We're totally fine with it. We are pro home field here, so
I haven't found a good way to incorporate the home field discount on Campus2Canton, which, by the way, go to homefield.com. Campus2Canton 15% off. Anyway, I like have the whole spiel written out and everything. I can never really find a good way to get some of our products in there because, like, the spiel is already long enough already. Like, it's so hard to, like, try to condense all that down.
Yeah, maybe that's another podcast for another day, but I feel like there's an art and a nuance to it. And Zach was getting pretty good at it, to be honest. He was getting pretty good at it last year. You kind of have to just feel the rhythm of the conversation and then find a way to tag shirt or hat or something with home field with a player, and then boom, you're in. You're golden. People don't see it. They don't skip over it. You know, I like to joke with, like, the guys that, like, I skip the first 4 minutes of all of your episodes of CTN because, like, it's spiel and then I'm gravy. I'm there. I get right to the data and we're there. We're having
literally
fun.
Put it right at the front of the show now, just for guys like you, Chris.
Thank you. Thank you. So, all right. Well, we're here to talk SEC. Obviously, Jared's got a good connection with Georgia. He was there for 6 years, and you got a master's, right? You didn't just do, like, the 6-year plan for undergrad.
Yeah, no, I got a master's while I was there. So
okay,
dual degree in civil engineering. Finally got the big boy job.
Real stuff too. I was a comm major, so I can't really even make fun of that type of degree. So,
are you finding it difficult now that you're working in the real world to do all that you wanted with CFF as well, or?
Definitely a lot less time. Like, again, when I was a master's student, there were definitely days that, like, you know, I would work my butt off, like, on Monday, but then Tuesday I'm like, yeah, you know what? I worked my butt off yesterday. I'll take half a day to work on master stuff, and then the other half will be CFF stuff. Obviously can't do that when I'm in an office and my computer screen faces the rest of the room. So, you know, the bosses be watching. But again, like, tomorrow's my first work from home day and everything like that. So I'm excited about that. I'll probably sneak in a little bit of time for CFF during that as well. But, like, you know, obviously it's a change. Got to figure out that work-life balance from here on out, but it's fun. And I enjoy the money. I can promise you that.
Well, we have the playbook down, or at least I do, for booking the conference room and just doing the midday show at the office. So if you need the granular detail on how to get it done, I can help you there.
Appreciate that.
If Jared's bosses are listening right now, this is after hours. We promise. We usually do this during the workday, but we did not for Jared. So you're welcome. Let's lead off with Georgia. I mean, why not, right? People expect Jared's on the call. Let's talk Georgia. The more I think about it, the more I think that, like, Carson Beck is an underrated best ball asset, and that's a lot of because of why because he's being drafted so late. I think he's underrated. I'm not saying he's a top 15 round quarterback, but I think that, I mean, no offense to Stetson Bennett, but, like, pieces, strategy, and just having superior athletes has really helped Stetson as a quarterback in CFF. So, Jared, like, what's your stance on Carson Beck? Andrew just took him, I believe, in our most recent best ball.
My first share, if you will. It felt good.
Yeah, maybe talk about why it's a good or a bad pick.
I've gone back and forth, so I'll be able to provide both here. Again, I think it'll be good because I do think that, again, assuming Georgia goes to the playoff again this year, I mean, Stetson Bennett threw for 4,000 yards last year. Carson Beck's a much better passer than him. Kirby and crew, they're going to rely on that. They have incredible group of wide receivers that if they don't take advantage of this year, I ought to go over there and slap every one of them. I don't care if they've won 2 natties in a row. So I bet Carson throws for 4,000 yards this year. The problem is, and this is the problem we had with Stetson last year, is do they wait to truly unleash him until games like the SEC championship, playoff games, things like that? Because Stetson's SEC championship, the game against Ohio State, and the national championship were friggin' phenomenal. If you took those 3 games and replaced Stetson's worst 3 games last year, he would have been a top 10 quarterback in CFF last year. Like, it was absolutely insane what they did. It's just, it happened during games that we don't really care about. Problem is, as well, Georgia once again has a pretty easy schedule here. They're going to dominate most of it. I have no clue how much they're going to rely on Carson Beck week in and week out during the regular season. Because, again, they got a pretty good stable of running backs. They're going to rely on guys like that. I think he is a best ball play, a late one, probably a good 5th or 6th quarterback. I have no clue which games he's going to go off on, but I do think there will probably be 3 games in there where he throws for 4 touchdowns. I just couldn't tell you what games they are.
Do you think the offense changes drastically under Bobo?
I don't think so at all. I think there's a reason why Kirby hired from within.
Okay.
Monken came in and completely changed the way that Kirby and crew thought about offense. He was great at calling plays, but the thing he really brought into the room was creativity. Like, look what Kirby and crew were doing before Monken arrived. It was a lot of very basic stuff. It worked because they could out-athlete a lot of people, probably 11 out of 12 games on their schedule every single year. Monken was the one who really kind of came in and said, all right, we're going to think about this way differently. Bobo was there for a year with Monken. They worked very closely together at times. So Kirby saw that and said, all right, I'm going to promote. Like, the plan was always to promote from within. It was going to either be Bobo or Buster Faulkner, who is now at Georgia Tech, who would become the offensive coordinator if Monken left. So I don't think there's any real plan to change the offense, which is part of the other reason why I'm a little skeptical that we see any CFF assets in the skill positions outside of Bowers, especially at the wide receiver, because I think they're going to spread the ball around just like they did the last 2 years.
That feels like a constant.
I want to react to a couple of things you said. This might just turn into an hour-long Georgia conversation, which would be great. But
that's why I started with it, because it was like, let's figure out where we're going to stand for the rest of the show.
I am inclined to push back on the phrase you used of unleashing Stetson the last 3 games, just from the perspective of, it felt very much to me, just watching all the games, that we did unleash him until every week we came out slinging it and then just throttled it down at halftime when we were up by 3-4 scores. Right. So I think when you look at the run pass ratio and stuff like that, first half versus second half, it's just so disparate.
I agree.
Games were called. So, I mean, it would be awesome if Kirby was inclined to just drop 60 on everyone and keep a QB1 in the game into the fourth quarter, right? But I don't see it happening.
Here's the thing. That's where I go back and forth with Carson. Because, I've talked to some people, and if there is going to be a year where Kirby lets his team drop 60 on everybody, it's going to be this year. Why? Because Kirby understands the power of narratives, and he knows that this offense takes a step back this year, the narrative's just going to be, oh, Monken was the reason why you guys got those national championships, not you and your staff. I wouldn't be surprised if he actually lets Bobo just unleash on different small teams throughout the year. I just don't know how quickly they put in a guy like Brock Vandergriff or Gunnar Stockton in. We'll see.
You could also justify it as getting your QB1 who has never really seen that much game experience more reps too, presumably.
Very true.
Part of Stetson Bennett's value, I'm cutting you off because if not, I don't get to speak at all.
You're exactly what I was going to say.
Part of his value came in rushing touchdowns. He had 7 rushing touchdowns. Let's see. No, he had 10 in total, but 7 in the regular season plus championship game. Does Carson Beck provide value rushing at all? Like, where's his value rushing? Because Stetson didn't run a ton. He had 47 carries for 140 yards. 184 yards, but it was the 7 touchdowns that made him way more valuable in CFF. Like, where does Beck stand there?
I don't think he reaches 7 touchdowns. Again, Stetson was like surprisingly quick. Like, a lot of people didn't realize just really how fast Stetson was. Like, yeah, he ran like a 4.6 at the combine. Like, if you watch his run, he absolutely did not care and gave up halfway through it. That dude outran several like SEC defenses last year. I mean, look at the game against Auburn. Look at the game against Tennessee. Ran into the end zone against Ohio State. Like, these are teams that have athletes on defense, and he outran them several times. So I don't think Beck has that. Again, I think Beck is willing to run. I just don't think that's part of really a strong part of his skill sets. Do I think he'll sneak it into the goal line probably 2 or 3 times during the year? I'd say so. There's probably a good chance of that, but 7 touchdowns? Absolutely not.
Was that where you were going, Andrew? Did I read your mind?
Yeah. Just going to talk about how much Stetson's running ability, how much is just
he was like sneaky really good. And
dude,
it was like
sick jukes.
Dude,
the one against South Carolina was great.
He'd roll out and he'd break away, and you were like, no one's touching him. And it was so shocking because he was such a smaller figure. And part of that's because like everybody on Georgia offensive line is huge. Running backs were huge. They got taller guys at receiver. So like he looks so small compared to everybody. It's kind of like the Chris Paul effect where like, you're like, yeah, Chris Paul's tiny, but then you realize, yeah, Chris Paul's like 6'5", 6'4", but he's standing, amongst 6'10", 7-footers. We said nothing to receivers. What about this real quick? Are you Bowers or are you Gadsden at tight end 1?
I think in best ball, I have to go Bowers, but in redraft, I think I'm going to go Oronde Gadsden just because Oronde Gadsden truly does serve as the number 1 guy for Syracuse. They're going to target him every given week. Bowers is incredible because he could take it 75 yards on any given pass, and he has just super explosive weeks. But if you look at his games over the last couple of years, he'll go off for like 2 games in a row and then disappear for three weeks, and then he'll come back. And it's awesome when he does come back. So again, in a best ball format, I'm all over Bowers because he'll absolutely win you weeks. But I think Oronde Gadsden, just because he serves as that true tight end, wide receiver, clear number 1 target for them, I think I'll rely on him a little bit more on a week-by-week basis. Like if I week by week, which one am I starting more often? I probably would still go Gadsden, unless he gave me a reason not to believe.
Makes sense. What about you, Andrew? Which one would you take?
It's I'm just thinking Bowers because he's a dog. Number 1 overall in tight end premium. Number 1 overall tight end.
You're the worst.
Yeah. Can I say two more guys about Georgia real quick?
Yeah.
1, Kendall Milton, please, for the love of God, keep your hammies healthy. I legitimately think that he will surprise a lot of people this year as long as he can stay healthy. And then number 2, if you are going to draft a wide receiver on Georgia, and that is the big if you're going to draft a wide receiver on Georgia, shoot for Dominic Lovett. The spring camp reviews for him have been absolutely insane this year. Him and Bowers are going to terrorize defenses all year over the middle. They're not going to be able to cover both of those guys. If they key in on Bowers, Lovett's going to have some really big games.
Well, we had to do that, didn't we? We had to talk receivers at UGA. All right. Well, I think we can knock out one of Georgia's biggest rivals in about 30 seconds. Florida. Anything there? I think Trevor Etienne is really interesting from like a Devi aspect. The Noah from the Campus Life show that Austin and Colin did, I think, did a great job of describing that. If you haven't listened to that Campus2Canton, you should. But like, there's nothing there, right? There's nothing at Florida that we care about in CFF, maybe besides ATN, right?
I have under QBs, under wide receivers, and at running back, I have and Trevor Etienne. I am semi-interested in Trevor Etienne because, again, if there's one thing Billy Napier is really good at, it is building a strong run game. And I do believe that when he gets it going, he can have multiple CFF running backs in his arsenal. Like, just remember back a couple years ago with Elijah Mitchell and Trey Regis. Like, both of those guys are absolutely insane. If they do narrow it down to Montrell Johnson and Trevor Etienne, I do think that they'll run it enough to where both those guys will have good weeks throughout most of the year. It's just neither one of them has an elite ceiling, which is why I typically pass on Trevor when he goes off in drafts. I'd have to look at what his ADP is, but I know he typically goes when I'm still looking for guys that still have that kind of RB1, like top 12 ceiling. And I don't think ETN has that.
Andrew, you're completely unbiased. Well, what are your thoughts on Florida?
The most apt descriptor, in my opinion, is harmless for them. It's kind of just how I feel about them at this point, as a rival, and just within the CFB landscape. I think Napier's gone within 2 years, probably. You hear like all the talk about the recruiting class he has coming in and whatnot, but I don't know. He's not doing it for me. But you have your projections open, right?
Yep.
Do you project? I assume you project target share, right?
I do. Yes.
What do you have for Pearsall?
19% of targets, so about 5.7 targets per game.
Yeah. Is that a factor of just what Napier offenses have looked like?
Last year, plus just in general what we've seen from Florida.
I feel like he could get higher just with how much that room sucks, and I mean, who knows what kind of connection he's going to have with presumably Mertz, right? But I was close to taking him in Nate's Dynasty League at one point in that draft, because that draft is deep enough to consider someone like him, because I think he will spike every now and then as just the only, like, I think he's a legitimately decent, like, good player. And he's commanded targets in the past, but like that offense just sucks. So I'll probably, from a DFS perspective, I'll pick and choose. And like when we do our SEC best ball, I think I had him last year on my championship team. Yeah. But that's a great format, obviously, because everyone gets drafted. And when you can like just lock in any sort of guaranteed production, right, in a format like that is a guy that I like to get my hands on.
Dude, he might be a third-round pick in that draft. Like, I'm not gonna lie.
Yeah.
Depends. Some of these I'm in the Big Ten 50-teamer, and man, past Ohio State guys, I know Nate likes to joke about like who's the third best receiver in the Big Ten. Like every year he says that, and legitimately it is gross. It's like,
oh yeah,
and it's with the MAC too. So like the third best receiver is just brutal. In terms of Pearsall, he's had some sporadically good games. He's had some very big plays, so it's hard to project him. It's also a little bit different because like Richardson is a different quarterback than Mertz. Like, do we see maybe a little bit more accuracy, a little bit more passing, because Mertz isn't going to be running it as much, right? So like, what kind of differences do we see? He still projects for like 9.5 points per game. So like, even if you boosted him, he's still at like 11, 12 points per game, like at best.
If Mertz had gone to an actually good system, would he have fit your criteria of being an under the radar best ball fifth-year quarterback?
No, he just doesn't run it. And he's not like Bo Nix or something, right? Like he doesn't run it well. Like
he
all
seems
of
athletic.
Yeah,
like watching him. He likes to treat the pocket like it's a Zelda maze, kind of like Bo.
Enough. He runs it enough, but there's definitely I have a clear thing, right? Last year at Wisconsin, he ran for negative 0.8 yards per carry. So that's not a really good description of how he can run the football, because I feel like 2 years ago he had a couple random crazy games, but
well, the first game he ever started, like, it was against Illinois, and he threw for a crazy amount,
right?
And everybody was like, "Oh my God, Wisconsin is like resurgent offense." Feels like there's at least one of those in the Big Ten every year. Because remember the Week 0 game with Northwestern last year, where like Ryan Helinski like threw for like 300 yards, and everybody's like, "Hold on, is Northwestern going to be good this year?" Hell no, they were not. They were not.
Yeah, so I think we're pretty much on it. ATN makes sense, but besides that, Pearsall's the next closest thing, but you'd have to be in a deeper format to get in there. Auburn, another Georgia rivalry.
Yes, sir.
More recently, not so rivalry. This one's interesting because they have some off-field storylines. They got Hugh Freeze. They got Jarquez Hunter. They have the new guy from Michigan State, Peyton Thorne, battling out Ashford, which is super interesting. I feel like I've talked my spiel on the whole team, so I'll do it real quick, and then I'm more curious to hear about what you guys think at this point in the season, off season. I think Ashford's the better quarterback, like the most likely best upside here, but I don't think he's better. Thorne is super uninteresting and conservative and technically a better quarterback, a bad fit for the offense. I do think Thorne wins the job to start. Hunter, I think he's a very good running back. Jared, you'll probably mention this here in a second. Like, what is Hugh Freeze going to do with his running backs? Because I think there's some concerns about like how many carries will the RB1 get in terms of like suspension. It feels like as long as the school doesn't step in, this is going to be like a one game at most type situation. But those are like the big things. And I think Brian Batty is underrated. Like, I know he's smaller and I know he did it at South Florida, but to me, he's super interesting. Like, speedster, great in the return game. I know it's South Florida, but like he ran for a ton of yards, and this is Hugh Freeze. Like, he can make things happen, I think, with a guy with his skill set. So, Jared, amongst what I said, pick maybe your favorite thing to talk about, and let's dive in.
Let's go running backs because you kind of led me into that there. Again, I don't trust Hugh Freeze to really feed one guy out of that group. I think there's a reason why he brought in guys like Brian Batty. Although, like, you brought up Brian Batty will never be a guy that you'll want to have at Auburn for CFF. Like you alluded to the fact that he's small. He reminds me a lot of Sean Shivers, who was at Auburn a couple of years ago and everything like that. Again, he's great for gadget plays. He's great for catching defenses off guard. He's a pretty good receiving back. I just don't think he'll ever be a featured guy over there. And then Damari Alston's a pretty decent running back in his own right, true freshman last year, going into his second year here. I think they're going to split. I think they're going to split the ball up a little bit, especially if Peyton Thorne and their lack of true receiving options, at least as it looks right now, limits that passing game. They might have to rely on that running game and split the carries between those guys. Because interesting names at wide receiver, but nobody that I'm really super in love with. Katz, do you have anybody in the receiving room that you kind of like?
No.
Okay, quick answer. Like it?
Yeah.
They have a bunch of random guys. Like Coy Moore was kind of interesting because he came from LSU, but that was like about it. Like Marner's got connections with the receiver coach.
Yes.
Shorter has like an insane TD rate, but that was at North Texas.
Yeah, I doubt it keeps
I know, like more limited type usage. Javarius Johnson's technically been like the best receiver they've had more recently, but like it feels like he's just kind of like the tallest midget. And then Rivaldo Fairweather. You like Rivaldo Fairweather, right, Jared?
I do like Rivaldo Fairweather. Again, when you have a lack of pass catching options at a team like Auburn, who will want to throw the ball at least somewhat, I doubt they want to be a team that just tries to run it down your throat. I'm interested in a talented guy like Fairweather. I've kind of come off him a little bit as the season's gone along. Haven't really heard a ton of buzz for him out of Auburn, and I've definitely been burned before by falling in love with a transfer tight end that I'm like, oh, he's going to be such a great additional weapon for this offense, and then he just never shows up because that staff just didn't plan on using the tight end. So I've definitely fallen a little out of favor with him, but I think he's great as like a third or fourth tight end option in a best ball just to try it out.
You know what this feels like?
What does this feel like?
This feels like one of your pump and dumps with 23.
It was a quick pump and dump. Again, I liked him I liked the transfer at first, but it did not last long. I can promise you that.
It's totally fair. You like a guy, you talk about him, and then you have more time to dig in. That's totally fair. We're just having, hey, pump and dumps. I just want to be able to say the phrase pump and dump. So,
dude, pump and dumps are funny.
Katz, you see that Vegas dropped some lines that said Ashford was the favorite to start the quarterback season.
Vegas is not the operative word here. This is offshore. Jared's favorite.
Yes.
I think it's Bet Online or Bovada or something. But in reality, this is franchise KF's favorite, one of his favorite markets to bet, where you get the kind of thing where you get capped at like $50 a bet. But because they know it's like a market that they probably don't have any, like they're just putting lines up there, right? The information is shoddy at best. You put up the wrong line, you're going to get burned real quick kind of deal. So it's just kind of putting a unique market up there to get some buzz and type of stuff, but they're not going to take real bets on it. So, I mean, they probably just had some on it, like, I don't know what the right phrase is, but it's not someone who's wading into the waters of college football research single day and spent 48 hours researching the Auburn quarterback room, right? They just kind of try to be directionally accurate, take some money, move the line type deal. So the idea that we should take Ashford being slotted as the actual favorite based on this line that's not the right way to think about it, I would say. The line will probably move based on bets that they take, and then of course once the camp actually starts to progress, things will move as well. I think I agree with your take that Thorne gets the job though to start things out.
Yeah, and it's largely unexciting because from a CFF standpoint, like the only way that Auburn has like some true like fun to them in terms of CFF, it's Ashford.
Yeah.
I just, Thorne is a 1.5 yard per carry type guy, better passer, sure, but we were never going to be on the receivers anyway, so that doesn't really help us. So hopefully we're wrong there, but we'll see. I'm going to do my best. Let's see how I can do the whole time to transition into rivals. So here we go. Alabama.
Yeah.
The biggest one here is quarterback,
Yes,
because, quarterback at Alabama has basically had value for what seems like forever and ever. It feels like we're in a 3-man QB battle, but it's probably closer to a 2-man. Tommy Rees is the OC. They're bringing Tyler Buckner from Notre Dame, who had Tommy Rees as the OC there before him. I'll let Andrew start on the quarterback conversation. Who wins it? Do you think it's a valuable position to have if you get it right?
So I think that we can think about Alabama, right, similarly to how we think about Georgia and Michigan and a couple other schools where they're probably going to score 40 points a game no matter what. And then the question just becomes, well, how do you want to think? How does that get divided up, and what does that actually look like? If we start with that assumption, and historically, right, that's been the case as well. But things have just kind of ran through Bryce Young, right, for the past couple of years, and through I guess who was it Mac Jones before him, or am I skipping someone?
Mac Jones, and
right.
I think
That
Hurts
Mac
before.
Jones situation with
So you forgot about Tua.
Yeah, and Tua as well, right? So much of that just ran straight through the quarterbacks. They were throwing it so much to these amazing receivers, and I guess that's why the way that the 40+ points for Alabama, how it looks different from a fantasy perspective than for Georgia and Michigan as well. So the question becomes, they're probably going to score a bunch of points again this year, right? But what does that 40 point per game output look like? Maybe it's a little less than 40, but short of really Buckner or Milroe running it a lot, this probably does look very different in terms of the distribution of fantasy production than what we've seen in the past. And I think it's fair to question if that is going to be if that distribution is going to be one where it is highly desirable to own the quarterback.
You never answered the question, Katz. Who wins the job?
No, I just wanted to talk about what I want to talk about. Who wins the job? So tough. We can rule. Can we rule out Ty Simpson at this point?
I think we can.
Yeah, I think we all can. Yeah.
All right. I'll go Buckner.
Jared, what do you think? Who wins?
I'm still riding with my guy Milroe. Again, I think he is he has the most experience in the Alabama system. Obviously, there's the connection between Buckner and Tommy Rees, but Rees was the one to replace Buckner at Notre Dame before he went over to Alabama. Like, this feels more like Buckner leaving Notre Dame, going to Reese, and like, please give me a home. Like, you don't have to start me. I just need to get away from Notre Dame. I still think Milroe, given the experience he's had in the system, I think will like it, and it is still the Alabama system. Like, that's what Alabama has been doing with their offensive coordinators. You don't bring in your system to Alabama. You convert to Alabama system when you come in. Same thing Georgia's doing with Mike Bobo. I'm still riding with Jalen Milroe, and I do think it will be valuable, regardless of who wins it. Jalen Milroe, Tyson, say Ty Simpson comes out of nowhere, wins it in the fall, Tyler Buckner, whoever wins it, I still think it's going to be valuable because, like Kat said, this is still an offense that's going to score 40 points a game. You don't know how those touchdowns are going to be distributed, but all three of these guys are dual threat guys.
How do you think that works? Like the whole where the system's at a higher level than a specific coach, because like you hear that with lots of other schools too. You hear that with at like Appalachian State historically has kind of been like that as well. I hesitate to say if like that's a thing at Western Kentucky, but we would all like it to be, right? And,
old school Georgia Southern, maybe.
Yep.
But I have no idea how it actually works mechanically and operationally within the building. Like, does the head coach just bring down the hammer and say, like, this is like we've always done this is how we're going to continue to do it? Or is it, I think that's culture.
I think that's part of it. And you got to remember, like, the offensive coordinator is just one person. Like, these are staffs with tons and tons of people within them that know how they ran it the year before. Obviously, the offensive coordinator is paid to come in and make sure things run smoothly from there, but they talk to their staff. It's not like they come in and bring the hammer down and be like, all right, guys, my way or the highway, get out. A lot of times they work with the people who are already there, who understand the players better than they do coming in. I think that's how you see programs kind of build up their own identity at offense, even if they are changing offensive coordinators over and over and over again. Does that make sense?
Yeah. I'm just like, as someone who's never gotten anywhere near like actually understanding anything from actual football perspective, I'm interested in the idea, but I just have like, I'm the furthest possible person to be away from anything practically experience wise.
It is interesting because I don't know how exactly it works, but I feel like Saban basically is like, yo, this is like the binder that we used last year and the year before that, and we have won like 1 million games, so like let's just keep using this.
You can add a few plays if you want to, but for the most part, we're running this.
That's it.
Exactly.
Plays. Isn't the problem though? Like, I've seen Jalen Milroe throw the ball. I saw him throw the ball against Texas A&M, and it was very ugly. Like,
so
you've also seen Tyler Buckner throw the ball.
Yeah, I think Milroe wins the job. I'm with Jared. I think Buckner is a little bit of in between like great. I mean, he's great. I think he's great for CFF purposes. If I knew he was starting, he would be like a top 15 rounder. Easy.
Yeah.
And I don't think he's good, but I think like with Milroe, like I don't think he's a good quarterback. I just think that he can probably do a couple things. Like I saw him against A&M. He wasn't great looking, but like they won. Mm-hmm. I mean, if you look at his stat line, right, 12 for 19, 111 yards, 3 touchdowns, an interception, 17 for 81. Like not impressive, but from like a CFF standpoint, that's like 23, 24 points, like in his first ever start. So very solid. I think like a team like Alabama with surrounding players that are good can get away with that type of stuff. And I think, Saban's in a spot where he's thinking like, this is probably my best bet, right? Like Buckner is going to be the same probably. And Simpson has some dual threatness to him, but what can be even more difficult at times is where you have to pass the ball. That becomes more of an intricate situation. They have some interesting receivers.
I was about to say, speaking of their pass catchers.
Yeah, I am not on any of them. I mean, we were on, like, we generally speaking as a CFF community were on them last year. I think there's no real reason to get heavily invested in any of them because I think this offense is so run heavy unless Simpson wins the job somehow or takes over. But like, Are you buying Malik Benson or Brooks or Burton, Jared?
I've taken like one shot at Malik Benson. Otherwise, for the most part, a lot of these guys typically go a little bit higher than I expect them to, or than I really want to in drafts, whether that be name ID. I think for the most part, we know what Ja'Cory Brooks and Jermaine Burton are, and like whatever your opinion is of them is not going to change. I don't think this next upcoming year. If you think Burton's bad, or he'll be bad again in your eyes, because they're going to hit my mic there. They're going to pretty much do the exact same thing they did last year there. I know some people are kind of interested in CJ Dupree, the tight end option they brought over there from Maryland. I think it's a mistake to think it's a one-to-one comparison system-wise to Michael Mayer, because again, Michael Mayer was a guy that just went high in the NFL draft. Cole Kmet was a guy that went high.
Is that why Dupree goes high in our drafts?
Yes, that's why people think like they're thinking it's Tommy Rees. He's the one who made I literally just said his name. What is wrong with Michael Mayer?
Yeah,
they think he's Michael Mayer. They think he's Cole Kmet. All these great Notre Dame tight ends, and I'm like, I don't really know about that. So it's a fun it's kind of like Fairweather, in my opinion, where if he's like your third option at tight end, yeah, shoot for it, whatever. I don't care. But if you're drafting him as like your first tight end, thinking, oh, this system produces tight ends, I just don't really think there are systems that necessarily produce tight ends. Tight end, in my opinion, is like the one position in CFF where you aim for the talent more than you aim for the system.
It's fair.
Yeah, I don't know. And there's so many variables in play on tight ends that it's hard to really peg and be able to feel like you get good data there. But LSU, this feels like a very similar offense to me, except you have like a star receiver, Malik Neighbors, maybe more like NFL prospect than like true like CFF superstar. You have Jaden Daniels, who's better passer than the Alabama guys, but truly is a runner at first.
Yep.
We didn't talk about Jace McClellan. I think we both, Jared and I think we both are big on Jace.
I adore him this year.
I don't think we're in on the LSU running backs as much though. So Andrew, what's maybe your most interesting thing to think about here with LSU's offense?
I would like to be able to talk myself into Logan Diggs at some point. I thought he was good at Notre Dame, liked him in Notre Dame, and you can drop a scenario easy enough that he wasn't brought over here to sit. It's a pretty run-heavy offense. Like, he could find his way to 1,000 yards and some touchdowns, right? Yeah. Neighbors seems cool, but I'm really not that interested in Jaden Daniels, wide receiver 1 at cost. But I am interested in hearing. So, do you actually think Jaden Daniels starts all 12 games? And do you think he starts and ends all the games outside of blowouts? You think it's just clear and simple? That's what's going to happen, or Nuss is just they're just going to keep that rocket launcher on the bench all season, even after. I guess Jaden, he's very good at not throwing interceptions. We could say that about him, right, based on last year's stats. But I don't know what else you could really say about him when it comes to his passing ability.
One of the greatest mysteries, in my opinion, of this offseason is how Brian Kelly kept both of those two on that roster. How Jaden Daniels, after a great after a pretty decent season, take LSU the first year you're there to the SEC championship. How he doesn't go to the NFL, I was shocked by, because again, the NFL is looking for QBs. I mean, Aiden O'Connell and Dorian Thompson-Robinson went pretty high in those drafts. I would have been shocked if Jaden Daniels got reached up for by one of those teams that took one of those guys there. So they bring him back, and I'm like, okay, if he's coming back, then Nussmeier's gone for sure, right? Like, there's no way Nussmeier's going to sit behind this for another year. And, well, here we are. They're both still on the roster. Like, somebody's getting lied to, in my opinion, because like I feel like the only way they get him back is if they think they give Nussmeier thinking like, I'm going to start at some point next year, and then they also tell Jaden Daniels like, hey, come back, we promise we'll let you start all 12 games. I think somebody's getting lied to. Unless Nussmeier's like the biggest like LSU fan in the world and just like will ride or die with that team until he's 80.
I drafted a bunch early in these best balls. I drafted a bunch of Daniels, and then I would handcuff them with Nussmeier at the very end because I figured one would transfer. Obviously, in my head, I'm thinking Nussmeier's transferring. I don't know, man. Is Nussmeier appeased by starting 2 games and playing 2 second halves? Like, does that? It's just hard for me to envision that Nussmeier was sold on staying at LSU for two random starts. Like, so to me, I'm envisioning Daniels playing in all of them, and like anything that's competitive. If you think about it, right, like the big game will be the first one. They need to win the first one against Florida State because
absolutely,
if they don't, then national championship playoff type aspirations might slide away. Because I think the reason why Daniels is intriguing from like a coaching standpoint for LSU is that, like, look what he did last year. He had, obviously they lost some games, but like it didn't really feel like he was the reason why. They had some dysfunctional things going on, and he feels like the very safe play. You play Nussmeier, it feels like that offense becomes very one-dimensional. So I think they have to win the first game to really make me feel good about everything. But ultimately, I can't project him not starting and playing every significant snap. I can't see Nussmeier staying for 15% of snaps or 25%. Like, how is that more appealing than going to Auburn? He could have gone to Auburn 3 months ago and he would be the starter day one, So
transfer rules aside.
Well, right. But you're correct. SEC to SEC, but you get the point, right? Like,
I get the point.
There's so many places he could have gone and been a starter. So I don't know. It is the most baffling of quarterback decisions this offseason.
What do you guys think about Mason Taylor? Like, we were drafting him, like, the injury news kind of came out that he was kind of getting limited this offseason and everything like that. Like, impressive freshman year, but like he finishes the tight end 61 last year. And we were drafting him as a top 10 tight end there. Like, again, I found him impressive, but like, do you guys think back then we were getting a little, like, we were kind of putting the cart before the horse there a little bit?
Probably. I mean, the thing is, I worry how many passing touchdowns Daniels is going to throw for like a tight end, usually big bodied, nice red zone target. And if you're getting 3 touchdowns, like you have to get more yardage or you have to have a ton of receptions. And I would be a little bit concerned about it. He had some really big games at the end of the season. He did. Like that always, myself included, I thought I was way more intrigued by him in February, March, April than I am now. And that might be because he had some good games down the very end of the season.
Yeah, week 8, 13th overall tight end, and then week 10, 9th overall tight end. Other than that, he was pretty much outside the top 60 every single week.
Yeah, I'm thinking more of the SEC championship and the bowl game. But you're right. You're right. He had his 3 touchdowns were in his last 6 total games period. So, Andrew, you seem uninterested with LSU.
I'm very interested in finding all the different pathways for Jaden Daniels not to reach his prop total since I'm invested in his unders.
You and Mike Bainbridge unders
makes a lot of sense, right?
Good luck.
Yeah, thanks.
We're keeping this train rolling. Arkansas, Rocket.
Have you given up on the rivals thing?
No. That's the golden boot, man. That's the golden boot. You know.
Oh, fair point. What am I talking about?
It's gonna get weird. KJ Jefferson, I think, is who I want to talk about because Rocket Sanders feels cemented, first round pick, low risk. I mean, if he doesn't hit, like, there's absolutely nobody in the country that can say, "I told you so." Like, that just feels like a lock, right? To be at least very good. KJ Jefferson's interesting, though, because it feels like more recently we hear they want to pass more or keep him healthier, which is weird because they have like Criswell behind him, and that feels like a legitimate backup. Jared, are you buying the quarterback? We're going to pass more. We're going to keep him safe. We're going to run him less, because that's where a lot of his value, in my opinion, comes.
I think they'll probably pass more and probably run him a little bit less. I don't think it's going to be anything that like tanks his value in CFF or anything like that. He's not going to become a statue all of a sudden. Arkansas doesn't have the plans that like Florida State has. No offense to my Razorback friends and everything like that. Jordan Travis, they ran a whole lot less last year because Florida State has championship plans and they want to keep their quarterback healthy, versus Arkansas just wants to get to a nice bowl game. I think with the fact you brought up Jacoby Criswell, the fact that they have a legitimate backup behind him now and not a grad assistant that's holding a clipboard 90% of the time, I think will actually make them a little bit more bold with him than they have been in the past, which sounds like an oxymoron because I think they'll run him less, but also I think they'll be this is really all to say. I don't know. I don't know. My big thing with KJ Jefferson is that he goes in like round 4 or 5 in a lot of these drafts. And it makes no sense to me because you look at other guys who finished in a similar range last year. Like he finished as the quarterback 26 last year. Quarterback 24 is Dylan Gabriel. You can get him like 3-4 rounds after KJ Jefferson. Curtis Rourke, I mean, obviously injury aside, you can get him several rounds later. Jane Delory was QB 21. You could get him like 6-7 rounds after KJ Jefferson. John Rice Plumlee, you can get a couple rounds after KJ Jefferson. Like, what has KJ Jefferson done to all of a sudden be like put in this clear QB2 tier that people are willing to reach up for him pretty consistently in like the 4th, 5th round? I just don't understand it. He's a great quarterback. Don't get me wrong. I think if you're looking for if you wait on QB, he's a great option to grab in that round 7 to 10 range, but he's almost never there because for some reason people consistently reach up to get him. I don't get it.
He goes from playing in one of the optimal systems to whatever they're going to be running now, which just feels like it's going to be
Dan Enos, yeah.
Yeah, very like pro style, the word no one wants to hear, right? And then like so I took the under on his rushing yards after seeing what you and Nick shared about that quote about kind of keeping him healthy or whatever. And
what was his rushing total at?
Do you want to guess?
We'll just say a clean 400.
600.
Holy sh!
Yeah, which I thought I was gonna bet more on it, and then I was looking at it and I was like, all right, like he ran for whatever it was, like 640 last year in 11 games, missed 2 games. He backed out the whole game and he's at 530. But still, I come back to he was just playing in Kendall Briles' offense this past year, which like there's so much pace, so much geared around his rushing ability, and now we're like it feels like he's going from optimal to introducing a lot of variables that are not optimal. So it feels like a good bet.
Fair enough.
Arkansas doesn't have a whole lot going. You know, tight end used to be fun for them. It feels like receivers, hodgepodge. Let's look elsewhere. Oh boy, who's a rival of Arkansas? What about
Missouri? Obviously, according to the SEC.
Do they do the cross every year?
Yeah, they do the cross every year, and they play on Thanksgiving weekend.
I just don't know who would then be Missouri's rivalry.
LSU Arkansas used to be Thanksgiving, and that was fun.
That is a good one.
I think that was the Friday one, the Black Friday one. So we'll go with Missouri. I don't know where I'm going after that, but we'll see.
Go to Mississippi State or Ole Miss afterwards. Just say Battle of the Misses.
So all right. So I listened to the receiver podcast you guys did at CTN with Proton this past weekend. Luther Burden to me is like super uninteresting. I just can't get behind him. I won't and have not drafted him at all. I get that he's like a great talent, huge recruit from Missouri, but like small yards per target. The volume isn't heavy. The offense isn't all that great. It's a tough conference schedule. Like it just feels like there's just it's just thing after thing. And I just don't know how in my head I could ever get to Luther Burden as a pick for me. Tell me, paraphrase the conversation you had with Froton that would convince me otherwise.
Well, again, in my opinion, he was one of the most misutilized players in all of college football last year. Again, like you kind of alluded to it, his yards per target were just absolutely abysmal. The fact that he finished the year with 45 receptions but didn't hit 400 yards receiving just shows you just like they were like, oh, like it's like Drinkwitz had this idea of like, oh, I had a dream one night where we just screen passed to Luther Burden all the time and we just won a whole bunch of games because of it. Tried it out in real life and realized, hey, that's a really dumb idea. They got a 5-star wide receiver. He has oodles of NIL deals out there. They need him to be the face of their program this upcoming year if they're going to land more guys. I mean, word is they're trying to land guys like Ryan Wingo this upcoming year in this year's recruiting class. Featuring the guy that you managed to land against all odds a couple of years ago seems like an important step if they want to continue that train. They bring in Kirby Moore, a much better offensive coordinator, in my opinion, who's featured a wide receiver one in the past, specifically in the slot, where they are moving Luther Burden to now that Dominic Lovett's at Georgia. I am in on Luther Burden taking a much bigger step forward this year. Smarter utilization of him. I do think he'll be a touchdown hog because, again, they want him to be the face of the program. And he's just, the best receiver that they have. I like Luther Burden. Again, do not draft him as your wide receiver one or anything like that, but I like him, especially if you go wide receiver heavy early. Grab him as your third wide receiver. I like it.
Feels like a lot of narratives, Jared. Not a lot
it is.
Actual
It is 100%.
Evidence.
It is 100%.
I get ridiculed all the time about narratives based around one player. So keep that in the back pocket.
Am I the one? Am I the one who does that? Who ridicules you?
Are you pro or anti JJ McCarthy? Is the question.
I mean, I think he'll have some big games. I just don't know if he'll be consistent week to week.
So narratives work sometimes, not always.
Yes, of course. Whichever one's confirmed my preconceived biases are the ones that I love to go with.
That's my favorite as well. Andrew, are you pro Burden, anti Burden, or are you just not caring? You're interested in something else with Missouri?
I'm cool with him. I've drafted him in like the 9th, 10th round range a few times. Jared hit all the points that kind of I used to talk myself into him as well. As my third receiver, I feel good about that. I'm fine with it. I could see it paying off.
So I'll ask you both real quick. In the most recent Champion Series draft, Burden went 5th pick of the 9th draft. Tell me, who would you rather have? Berrien Brown, Evan Stewart, Luther Burden? Maybe rank them, Jared. Stewart, Brown, Burden.
It's tough because, again, like Burden to me is like clear best. To me, he has the best wide receiver and it's the clearest path, in my opinion, to being like clear and above everybody else in that receiving room versus like Texas A&M. We'll talk about them here in a bit, but like I think Moose Muhammad is an underrated receiver. I think him and Evan Stewart are going to get plenty of targets this year, but I don't think either one will separate themselves from the other. And then Berrien Brown, I mean, don't get me started on this rant for the 1000th time, but again, like I love the talent of Berrien Brown, but again, he just doesn't play in the position that typically works well in Liam Cohen's system. Again, that's the slot. That's where Tavian Robinson's going to be hanging out in. So if Berrien Brown played in that slot position that Liam Cohen loves to target, I'd be all over Berrien Brown. But I think I'm still going to go Burden, Stewart, and Berrien Brown. Not a huge gap between Stewart and Berrien Brown, though.
Okay. Andrew?
Brown's definitely third for me. I haven't drafted Evan Stewart at all. I think
neither have I.
Yeah, I think he's awesome. I think maybe I've listened to too much noise, but gotten scared. Like when last season concluded, I felt like I was going to be super into Connor Weigman, super into Evan Stewart this year, and I haven't drafted any of them yet. I feel like I've just the big medias and all the cool kids on Twitter have been talking so much smack on Jimbo and Texas A&M that I've allowed it to infiltrate my brain, and kind of I can never push click on either of those guys, even though I feel really good about them.
Yeah,
So
in my
you're
rankings,
Burden, Stewart, Brown then?
Yeah.
Yeah, I just looked at my rankings. Burden's in my top 20. I have Stewart down as my wide receiver 43, and then Berry and Brown wide receiver 51. So pretty much what I said. Not a huge gap between those last two, but definitely a gap between Burden and them.
Yeah, Evan Stewart's super interesting to me because, man, he was getting, as a true freshman, like a ton of targets and was
In
really
big games too.
Big games, and was really impressive. Like big catches, impressive catches. Anytime there was a big play, it was either him or Muhammad. And like, it just was great. Like, you were impressed. You came away watching a Texas A&M game impressed with Stewart. The problem is Jimbo. And you just worry about how much they're actually going to score. He had 2 touchdowns last year.
Yeah.
He had a ton of targets. He had 53 catches and 2 touchdowns. That is worrisome because the quarterback play was so bad that, I don't have it in front of me, but I would imagine the catch rate is like 50 to 55%, 58% with Stewart. You're talking
A&M is a
a
natural pivot from Missouri since they both came into the SEC at the same time. So let's just
exactly. Well, I thought we all assumed that already, so thank you.
Yeah.
But thank you for confirming. But yeah, so I love Stewart. It's just hard because of the touchdowns and the lack of big plays to go with, like what I've already said.
Can I offer a comp?
Sure.
Doesn't this kind of feel like George Pickens going into his second year? Where, like, again, insane, like great freshman year. Anytime there's a big play happening in the receiving game, it was George Pickens, former 5-star guy. Some people really like him. People were willing to draft him up high because of how much he was targeted as a freshman. But you didn't really know if you could buy into Georgia's offense or not. Guess what? People were right not to. I think it kind of feels a lot of the same way. Now, I do think Evan Stewart set up a little bit better with Bobby Petrino running the show a little bit, but again, he's historically liked to spread it around a little bit. So I still don't know if the ceiling will be there for Evan Stewart, but I think it's kind of comparable. What do you think?
Yeah, I think we worry about Petrino actually calling 0% of plays, right, Andrew? I think that's the concern there.
It's a good comp, though.
Well, I'm just saying, like, for Stewart moving forward. I think sometimes rivals are rivals because they have similar color schemes. So let's talk Mississippi State. I will admit this, not a pump and dump, but maybe a pump and dump. I thought Will Rogers could, like, conceivably retain value in CFF.
It was very similar to my fair weather pump and dump, where it was very quick. You liked it at first, but then you kind of quickly backed off. You're like, okay, maybe I'm getting a little bit too.
Yeah, the more I think about it real quickly, I realize, you know what? This doesn't feel like it's going to check out. Will Rogers, unfortunate. I think there is maybe a place for him in some formats. Like, I think in best ball, if you take some riskier takes, if you go for Central Michigan's quarterback, if you try to nab Bama's quarterback and some of these riskier plays, Will Rogers should theoretically start all the games, should be a 15 to 20 fantasy point guy that fills in quite nicely. But that's a very late type option. I think there's a time and a place for a guy like that. Doesn't feel like he's going to be, unfortunately. What a wild offseason. He goes from top 10 quarterback to top 70 quarterback. Like, what a crazy turn of events. Obviously caused by the unfortunate passing of Mike Leach.
Yeah, you're talking about, like, in deep enough formats, you're perfectly happy with him. Dude, in Nate's 24-team, like, 45-round dynasty league that we started up earlier this offseason, I would be crying tears of joy if I had Will Rogers as one of my quarterbacks right now. One, that's how badly I drafted quarterbacks, but also, two, like, it's
step into my office.
Do you have Will Rogers in that league?
Yeah, I have like 20 quarterbacks.
Okay, I'll see what I can do, Andrew, because I'm not gonna lie, I'm struggling there. Anyway, Will Rogers, you've come down on him. I've kind of come up on him a little bit. I've kind of talked myself into, like, God, what's his name? They brought it. Kevin Barbet. Like we saw last year, like Chase Bryce was inconsistent, but like they were willing to chuck the ball around when they needed it to. And if they get into scenarios like that with Mississippi State this year, Rodgers will feel right at home. He'll go right back to what he was doing with the air raid. In fact, it might be even better because it's not simple routes all over the field that are easily defendable if you know how to defend the air raid system. But I think he'll have quite a few pretty good games this year. I'm definitely the most interested, though, in Jaquavius Marks with them moving to a potentially run-heavy system here. No other running backs on that team really are anybody that I love. And with Dylan Johnson out of the way, I think Marks could be in for a big year. What do you guys think?
I could buy it. I could talk about this team for a while because I think there's interesting things going on, a little simmering under the surface. I haven't drafted Marks at all. I get it though. It makes a lot of sense.
He's going pretty late in drafts too. Like I was just looking at it. Yeah, he's going as RB53 in our ADP at ChasingtheNattyCFF.
Yeah, I don't know. I feel like he's usually off the board between like rounds 10 and 15 and the draft.
He's round 13, late round 13 is what I have as ADP at.
Yeah, that's fair. Just thinking about like a lot of the other running backs I'm drafting in that area, like there's a lot of projection baked into a lot of them, right? So similar kind of guys. I don't know. I get it, but it just hasn't happened for me. Do you have thoughts, Chris?
I like Marks my projections like Marks, but it's super hard to figure that out because of all the coaching changes. Like this is such a drastic change. 13th round, I don't like Marks. If you're talking 15 to 20th round, I like Marks. Like I think
let me give you some of the running backs going off around him and tell me who you like better. Like Jalen Wright, Tennessee. John Lee Elridge, Air Force. Jabari Small, Tennessee. Katron Allen, I will give you that. That's a pretty good pick in that range. But Kyrie Robinson, San Jose State. I'd take Marks over pretty much all of those guys. Well, actually, no. I do like John Lee Elridge quite a bit, but I know you wouldn't take him. Okay.
That's it. 50-50 for Elridge. I wouldn't take Wright over him. Jabari Small, I'd probably lean Marks barely. And then the last guy, Kyrie Robinson, I wouldn't take him over Marks. So I think it's like 2 out of 5, basically, I would take over Marks. So that's fair. That's fair. It's just so hard for me to like conceptualize what could possibly happen with him. And the thing is, right, like the upside could be crazy because if they do want to run it, like significantly run it, he is like the lone proven guy. He's shown to catch the ball. He's shown to be successful running. He might be in store for like a big season. So we'll see.
I have some quick thoughts on this team.
Yeah, go for it.
Are you in on Justin Robinson? Because I am in the right format.
I am rooting for Justin Robinson. I have not gotten myself to take him anywhere, but I do believe that I do think he is probably the most talented receiver in that room if he's actually given the chance over there. Yeah, I do like Tulu Griffin as well. But.
Yeah, when you just think about the progression of last year, right? He was playing the same position that Caleb Ducking was, and Ducking started off super hot, touchdowns every single game, getting all the snaps, and Robinson ate into that throughout the year as the year progressed. And by the end of the year, the script had flipped, right? It was Justin Robinson's role. I lit a bunch of money on fire on him in the Egg Bowl, but then in the bowl game, right, he came back, won bowl game MVP, went for like 100 yards and touchdown. Look at the game logs. It wasn't just that, a bunch of games in the back half of the year. As he started to get more and more snaps. Talent's obviously there. How is he going to get a scholarship as a Georgia wide receiver, Chris? But so, I mean, it's got to be a deeper league, but I don't know. I can't say what the threshold is, but at a certain point, I stop looking for our favorite type WR3 type receivers, third receivers on like top teams, and I flip the script for myself to why don't I go find a WR1 receiver that just there's either something sketchy about the team or just there's projection into like he hasn't done yet type deal, and he's one of those guys where it's like all right, like him, that dude Bub Means on Pitt, Miles Marshall on Miami, Ohio, like you can easily make an argument against them all, but at the same time, like they might be commanding huge target shares as the WR1 on their team.
Colby Young and Nick McMillan out of Buffalo, I'd probably throw in that tier as well. And then Corey Rucker goes pretty late as well.
Yeah. I still draft Traore because he's got the tight end designation, and like when you think about what his journey has been like, right? There's still some more hurdles. I think he gets eligibility. But then like we've seen so many guys, all right, they transfer onto a roster and it just doesn't happen year one. So, but now you can get him in like the 20th round or whatever. And like, if he just puts up like whatever would be representative of like WR2, WR3 numbers at tight end, that's huge payoff. So I'm still in there. I thought there was another, so it's similar to how I don't really believe that it's just start 12 games for Jaden Daniels. I don't think we've heard the last from Mike Wright either. I don't think it's that easy for Will Rogers. When does Mike Wright get his number called, and what does that look like?
Hold on, let me see. What's the first game for Mississippi in 2024?
Mississippi State. I don't.
Yeah,
what a tough situation, man. Like Mike Wright was such a great name for people in portal, and then he does that, and
dude,
it doesn't that's not a good fit pre or post.
Neither
changes.
One was great.
Like, it just is. It's confusing. It's it baffles you.
He wouldn't be super shocking to be, in my opinion, one of those guys who might transfer over to wide receiver.
I agree.
At some point, like
Raider type.
This is his last year, though, isn't it? Like he doesn't have eligibility after this, does he? Right.
Let me see what Nick says.
I feel like I've seen him described as a senior, which is a very abstract term in 2023.
No, he's got 2 years technically. Because 2020 was his true freshman year. So
okay, nice.
Well, he might have 3 years, including this year. Then.
Yeah.
By Halani math.
By Halani math. Halani math says, yeah, because he only played 4 games in 2020. So there's a shot he has 2 more. Maybe that's why he went to Mississippi State. Then maybe he's playing chess.
That makes me happy to hear that. Even if it doesn't,
I still don't know if that's a good fit. Like why is Mike Wright playing a pro style offense?
I mean, if they let him run, they let him run. I mean, you don't bring it. You would think. I would think you don't bring in a guy like Mike Wright without thinking that you're going to let him run somewhat. But who knows? Who knows?
Agreed. All right, Ole Miss is the natural progression. Getting back to true rivalries here, it feels like Dart news came out this past week where he's quarterback 1 and Spencer Sanders is doing the old Tyron Smith, just graduate real quick and get the hell out of there type of thing. Dude, what if Spencer Sanders goes back to Oklahoma State?
Dude, I've been telling you for months where he's going.
I don't really listen to you.
No, well, I mean to your own demise, but I think he ends up at Tulsa.
Poor Braylon Braxton drafters.
Yeah, Gunny's not letting him back to Oklahoma State.
Would be cool though.
It would be cool.
So are we thinking that Dart's we've read I know Jared, you've seen the same stuff. I don't know what you've seen, Andrew, but I know you have Google alerts on a lot of this stuff. Are we thinking Dart's the starter, or do we think that there's like an actual shot that Sanders could still win the job?
I'd say it's a 75% chance that Dart wins the job at this point. And that probably goes up every day that we don't hear news that Sanders is doing. I mean, Obviously they're not practicing right now, but like fall camp comes around. If I don't hear anything within the first week that like Sanders is making a move, it's Dart's job. And frankly, I think
Sanders can't transfer out in the next like 10 days or something, right?
I would say like he can't graduate, right? I would say he graduates soon. So, but Dart, I think if he gets that job, like talk about a post-hype sleeper kind of guy, because like he was a guy that was going really high in drafts last year because it was Lane Kiffin's offense, and a lot of it came in garbage time and everything. But he did almost throw for 3,000 yards last year. And he ran for over 600 yards. Like, people kind of forget about that. It's just the fact that he only scored 1 touchdown on the ground because, you had Zach Evans and Quinshon Judkins, the ultimate dynamic duo back there. I think there's a little bit of touchdown regression that comes along with that. And if that is the case, like, he is a pretty decent value in a lot of drafts. There's not a lot. Like, let me see where he's going right now. Let me look it up. Like, there's not a lot of guys who are going in the 17th round, just found him, who are going to run who have ran for 600 yards last year.
I just took him in the Champion Series at 16, mid 16th round. Andrew took Sanders the next round.
I saw you double tap in a different draft. I was like,
but I had it on the elbow. I just thought it'd be fun to do,
Yeah.
I think I did that at like the 20th round, like the 1920 or 2021. Where are you guys drafting? Andrew, where are you drafting Dart? Let's just say right now, Sanders entered the portal 5 minutes ago. Where are we drafting Jackson Dart?
I'm not drafting him. I don't think he's good. I don't know. He just doesn't do it for me. Like, I watch the guy play and I don't see the fire. I don't like it. Just the sum of the parts doesn't equal the whole, however you want to phrase it. Like, it wouldn't be surprising to me if he lost his job to whoever QB2 is at some point. I'm probably just passing in favor of someone else at pretty much a realistic point.
Okay. Jared?
I'm kind of looking at it, and he'd probably move up into my, like, where you would grab your QB4 range. So, like, around JJ McCarthy, Tanner Mordecai, Taylor Green, around that kind of range for me. So if you translate that over to ADP, that's probably looking at, 14th, 15th round. So a little bit higher than where he's going right now. But honestly, I could be talked into taking him even higher than that. Crazy thing is, according to my ADP, Spencer Sanders goes like 3 rounds ahead of him.
Sorry.
Andrew, I don't think you're in our ADP at all.
Yeah, it's an interesting situation. Maybe the second most interesting piece of this offense is how we stack or how we rank the receivers. Jared, I know your thoughts on Zachary Franklin, if you want to church it up. Katz, do you have some Franklin thoughts, or do you lean towards Jared's opinion?
I don't know his opinion, but I don't know. I'm not interested really in the receivers. I think I've drafted Trig once or twice, just because it was like so cheap at the end of a draft where I needed like a tight end 4 or 5 or something, and I'd rather take him over Prescore as second year in the system. Like, just some of the highlights of watching Trig just treat these kids like they're 8th graders is insane. So
yeah,
at that point, right, where like when you're trying to figure out tight end 4 or 5, it's like any straw that you could grasp at. And that's
any sign of positivity you're
exactly.
Gonna, yeah. And I just got really depressed because I just realized early on in the offseason, I took Franklin in the first round in like 2 or 3 drafts.
No,
what's funny is what an offseason. I just bragged to all the C2C guys in Slack that I took Franklin at 1807. What a value. I just took him 17 rounds later than I did 3 months ago.
I'm glad that you guys in like the experts drafts have figured out that his value should drop, because tanking, like I do my like weekly drafts live on our YouTube channel, and I've seen him go like round 10. And I'm like, okay, that's fine. I like the drop. That's a pretty good drop. I'm still not taking him really there, but like I kind of get it. That like Lincoln Riley's done well with wide receiver 1s in the past, at least for a couple of games. So it's a best ball format. Why not? But there's still some people who are going to reach up and grab him in like the 3rd, 4th round sometimes. And I'm like, guys, like,
it's name value.
You're relying.
Name value.
It is name value. Like, you're just recognizing the name and hoping that he can like step it up at Ole Miss. Like, G5 to P5 is a legit jump. And like, you got other guys there like Trey Harris, Jordan Watkins has been there for a couple of years now. Like, Charlie Weis, the offensive coordinator, his history with wide receiver 1s has been spotty at best. It's really kind of awful, if I just want to be blatantly honest about it. I don't think that changes this year with Franklin. I think people are way overpaying for him right now. His average, according to ADP, is wide receiver 33. Heck no, I'm not taking him anywhere close to a starting position on my fantasy teams.
Yeah, it's name value. It's Ole Miss. Like, and I think Lane Kiffin is kind of like a sexy name. And if you can tag a player to Lane Kiffin, it kind of like resonates. It just feels like the more you think about it, the more it's unappealing, unfortunately. I would like to kind of speed this up. So we're going to skip over Kentucky. We technically talked Barry and Brown a little bit. So
We did.
I think we're good. Real quick, Raymond Davis, I like. If their offense is better, then he should project really well. Chris Rodriguez was really good option for them. But let's I don't want to talk Tennessee. I don't want to end with Vandy. So let's start with Vandy.
I would say go to Vanderbilt because they're rivals with Ole Miss. They have the cross division rivalry.
Look at that. This is why we have you here. So Vandy, all right, let's talk Tennessee now. Okay, no. So I don't know, man. Vandy to me is like Will Shepherd, who I think is a little fool's gold. Froton, if you haven't talked, I cited again the Chasing the Natty. He did a great job of talking about Will Shepherd and some caution there. But besides that, I don't know, man. Like Cedric Alexander, I know you're on him, Jared, from like a dynasty standpoint, right?
Yeah, I think I've drafted Cedric Alexander in every single. I have 4 dynasty teams. I have Cedric Alexander on 4 dynasty teams. I've just been able to pick him whatever value I want, which is crazy to me because like in a dynasty league, like I know people think Vanderbilt's rough, but like Raymond Davis ran for 1,000 yards last year, and again, like maybe Cedric Alexander doesn't do that this year. But just last year, we had Jaden Ott go absolutely nuts on Cal's offense. And Cal's offense, nobody thought any good was going to come out of that. So, like, I'm always willing to take shots on guys who are true freshmen and are set to start that true freshman year. Again, in redraft, I think I have him ranked. It's not very high and everything like that. I think there's a decent chance that it's a committee this year. And then next year is the year that he really explodes. But, like, I like him. And again, AJ Swan, I think it makes Vanderbilt a little bit more interesting because I think he is the best quarterback they've had in a good minute. Do I think he's going to be fantasy relevant? No. But at the same time, like I think it makes Will Shepherd and even like a guy like Jaden McGowan, who's a true freshman last year, slightly more interesting for the future, maybe. I don't know. We'll see. That's all I got on Vandy.
Alexander's definitely going to start, right? That room sucks outside of
him. It sucks.
Yeah,
it's pretty bad. Yeah,
they say it's like a 3-headed monster right now. The fact that he is leading that 3-headed monster already tells me it's gonna be his show real quick.
Yeah, like 3-headed beanie baby monster. Maybe it's probably the best way to phrase that.
I don't buy into all the like Vandy is getting a lot of program building type vibes, like from national media and stuff like that, but. You run off your best player just because you want to think about like 3 years down the line and when AJ Swan's gonna like be his senior year and like we need to start him now so that he's good when our competitive window is open or whatever. It's like, dude, you had Mike Wright out here winning games for you for the first time in like 5 years or whatever, and let's bench him while we're 3-1 or whatever, and then obviously he comes back and wins them a few more games or a couple more games down the stretch. But that is, I don't know. That just gives me bad vibes.
Yeah, I'm not buying them long term. Like, I think they're turning the corner from like just basement dweller, but like, I don't know. That's a tough enough East Division. That's a tough enough conference in general.
But like for CFF purposes, we don't need them to win games. We just need them to be competitive. That's all we need them to be.
Of course,
because like Raymond Davis would not have reached 1,000.
I just wanted to hate on the administration and the.
No, I got you. But like Raymond Davis last year would not have reached 1,000 yards if they weren't competitive in those Kentucky and Florida games, in those Mizzou games. Like the fact that they weren't behind by 2 touchdowns constantly made it to where that some of those guys can get involved just a little bit more. So enough about Vandy.
Yeah, true rival Tennessee.
Yes, sir.
Man, what an offense! What an incredible, just specimen of an offense, right? Led by Joe Milton with the strongest arm this side of the Mississippi. I don't know, man. Where do we begin? I don't want to talk running backs. That feels like a committee. That feels like a kind of overvalued.
It's a two-headed monster between Small and Wright, and they're hardly going to get the touchdowns.
And I wish, man, it felt like they were going to go way more of an RB1 versus RB2, like a committee type stuff last year, but they showed that's not the case.
Nope.
So I guess like receiver one, I mean, is it Squirrel? Is it Dante Thornton? I am a Brew truther, and even I would say he's not like a true Tennessee receiver one. So I don't think we need to entertain that. So the question really is Dante receiver one? Is it Squirrel receiver one? What do we think?
White is the one who I would bet on. Like, again, there's a reason why he's going as high as he is. I think most people agree that with his experience in the system and everything like that, he showed he has a good connection with Milton. There's a reason why he's going so high. I think he's going a tad too high. Like, you're talking about projecting a lot of receivers that go in that range. Like, White is a lot of projection. Mm-hmm. We've seen a little bit of it. Still a lot of projection versus Dante Thornton. You can get several rounds later. Now, if you're drafting with Nick even Allen, like he goes off in like the 7th round. But like most people, like, again, I can look at my ADP here again real quick. But Dante Thornton, I think, is kind of getting slept on a little bit. Some good reports coming out of him with spring and everything like that. The staff seems to like him quite a bit. And part of what made Hyatt so phenomenal last year was his speed skill set and the fact that he was really the only receiver that could be a burner like that had experience. Obviously, we now know Squirrel White is also a speed demon, but you know, he's a true freshman last year. They're not going to throw him out there that quickly. This year, Tennessee wide receiver one, I think, has not as high of a ceiling because they're going to have both Thornton and White out there. And it might be a case where some weeks both of them go off, some weeks one of them goes off, and some weeks the other one goes off. And then some weeks, I think it could be that neither one of them really does all that great. I think it's a bit more varied this year versus like last year. Jalen Hyatt had those like 5 monster games in the middle of the season before he's brought back down to earth towards the end of the season.
So is it a hot take to say that Ramel Keaton's going to start over Thornton?
I don't think so at all because, again, like Ramel Keaton is like, again, he's a program guy. I believe this might be his last year.
Sounds right.
He plays on the outside. I think
their
starter is relative because I think they're going to run a ton of 4 wide receiver sets out there this year.
Okay.
I think they're going to have 2 slot guys, which are probably going to be Thornton and White, Ramel Keaton on one side, Brew McCoy on the other side. I think that's probably what you're going to see a ton of from Tennessee this year. If they run 3 wide receiver sets, I think it's a mix of any of the 4 guys. It's going to be Brew, White, Dante Thornton, and Ramel Keaton. Any given play could be 3 out of those 4 guys, in my opinion. They can mix and match those guys pretty well.
Yeah, this is a tough one because there's a lot of pieces that go into this. Heupel typically produces an awesome receiver one. He also plays a ton of 3 receiver sets and like doesn't take him off the field. Part of that's just because like they run so fast of an offense that you don't
have that data. Oh yeah, I forgot you do have that data.
I mean, like you can just look at the data in terms of target percentage and stuff. It's like UTSA in a sense where it's like 27, 25, 21. Like they just don't come off the field. And part of that's just because they try to run so fast that if you took someone off the field, then the defense could reset, right?
So if you Thornton's a bust.
No, so I'm not a Keaton guy. I mean, okay, so the way to optimally make this Tennessee offense run is to move Brew to tight end. I have said this more recently on Twitter.
I'm not super opposed. I'm not.
Tell me why this doesn't make sense. Okay, so Thornton 6'5", like 220, 215, fast, big frame. Obviously Squirrel's incredibly fast. Keaton is not like a slot receiver. I think he's got a little bit more size than like a true slot.
Yeah, definitely.
They want to theoretically have a tight end in there because they want to be able to run it in a little bit up the middle. Why can't Brew do that? Because Brew is not like a deep threat. He's not like a post over the middle. He's really like a 10 to 15 yard type, slant comeback route type of guy, or like a quick throw to him. Mm-hmm. So why can't we just put him at tight end and then push him out to slot a little bit, like just to kind of make it happen? That's the way to optimally run this offense. I'm just saying, Josh, listen to BTR. You'll know how to do it.
Everybody wins.
But it's a challenge because there are so many options. I love Squirrel. I've loved Squirrel for a while. I don't have like any of them because I just don't feel comfortable taking him in the third round, and that's where he's
wide
going.
Receiver 1 sometimes, and I'm like,
oh yeah, big time.
It's a big
don't.
jump.
I don't feel comfortable doing that. Like I know there's somewhat of a connection. I know he's super fast, and Joe Milton throws it a mile, but like that just doesn't scream consistency out of some of these comparable receiver ones that you can get out there for similar value. So
also, Andrew, real quick, a bit of a damning indictment on our love for Keaton. We just finished the supplemental draft for the BTR Dynasty, in which it's 16 teams, 45 roster spots. Ramel Keaton's still a waiver wire pick.
The draft just isn't deep enough. Like Zach, I assume this is like very clear. Zach does all the commission. We don't do shit for this, but we need like 8 more teams next year so that guys like Ramel Keaton can actually be properly rostered. So when they break out, it's not just like some drooler getting them off waiver wire, but he's sitting snugly on my bench spot.
I'll be real. I'm looking through my roster right now, being like, is there anybody I forgot to drop so that I can go grab Ramel Keaton real quick?
Inadvertently, we're going to end with one of Cass's favorite teams, which is Andrew. Who have we not talked about?
Oh man!
Oh god!
Your future first round draft pick, Spencer Rattler.
Oh, dude, nice.
What are the chances? Realistically, and Andrew realistically, what are the chances of Rattler going first round?
You're misrepresenting my viewpoint from the 2023 draft. It wasn't that the bet that I made that I fortunately got refunded because of like some terms and conditions that I was unaware of in the bet was not that he would go first round. It was that he would be the first overall pick in the 2023 draft. And since he didn't declare, DraftKings didn't take my money. They refunded it to me, which was very thoughtful of them. I appreciated it. Realistically, go first round. Like I don't understand. I just don't understand why. All right, there was nothing but number 1 overall pick buzz about him. It was 2 years at Oklahoma, right? Or what's just 1? I can't remember.
2.
And now, like, okay, so he like bombed out at Oklahoma. Outside of the last month at South Carolina this year, the first couple months didn't look great, but like the trajectory that he ended on this past year was phenomenal. And not just from a statistical perspective, but like you watch highlights, you watch throws, like the arm talent is not a question. So like if he's starting to get back to where he was and he's putting it on tape, like why would he not be in the first round conversation, considering not like he was considered the favorite to be the number 1 overall pick for a representative portion of his college football career?
Well, the problem was it wasn't that Rattler was the favorite to be the number 1 overall pick. It was just that insert Lincoln Riley quarterback here was favored to go number 1 overall. I think once people saw that Rattler wasn't going to live up to the Kyler Murrays, the Baker Mayfields and stuff like that, at least at a college level, they backed off on that real quick. And then he lands in South Carolina, didn't do super hot. They bring in a new offensive coordinator out of Arkansas, who was the tight ends coach over there. Maybe it works out, maybe it doesn't. I just don't really see there being room for 4 quarterbacks in next year's draft in the first round. Because again, you got Drake May, you got Caleb Williams, you got Quinn Ewers,
JJ.
3 guys. I'll let that hang there for a second. Again, is there room for 4 guys? Probably. But again, he's in that next tier of guys that maybe jumps into the first round if they have a good year. But there's multiple guys like that. You got JJ McCarthy. You got Bo Nix. You got Spencer Rattler. Like those are 3 guys just right there that like, yeah, could they go first round if they have a phenomenal year? Yeah, sure. Why not? I think the odds are against him because he's kind of fighting for that 4th spot. He feels a lot like a guy like Will Levis, where he gets hyped during the season, he gets mocked in the first round, draft night comes, he's probably dropping into the 2nd, maybe 3rd round.
I think like what Will Levis should have been going into the season. Like it felt like he was so overhyped, but he realistically kind of went where he probably should have, right?
Yeah.
Juice Wells, I think, is super cool. Like, we saw a lot of like great target share get pushed to him. There's a big gap though at running back. Jaheim Bell was getting carries. Marshawn Lloyd was super interesting. We've talked about him in previous conference previews. Dakereon Joyner is up to 229.
And he's got wide receiver eligibility.
And quarterback eligibility, although that doesn't really help in this.
I took him in because of the try eligibility in a draft recently.
In a best ball, it could actually make sense to pick him because of it, the quarterback side of things. I don't know, man. I love Dakereon. I've had him on dynasty teams in the past few years. He's cool. He kind of reminds me of like a Jamari Joyner type, but like at a much better, significant level.
Did you get him in the Conference USA best ball?
I did not.
Oh.
No.
It's your boy.
I'd have to double check, but I don't think so. Is there any chance that Joyner like is a legitimate fantasy asset? I mean, 229, like he was playing quarterback. He can clearly catch the ball. It feels like he can do everything. Like maybe if we do enough all together, it'll work. Jared, we're Joyner standards. So standards. What are you thinking?
I think the only reason why I'm interested in him is because of that wide receiver eligibility. If he was just straight running back, I'd probably not touch him. But like, you get a guy that gets 15 carries per game, and if he gets a couple of touchdowns on the ground and everything, like that's more than serviceable for a wide receiver. I am starting to grab him at the end, especially some dynasty drafts and everything like that. If he works out, he works out. If they split it up too much to where it doesn't matter, which is a possibility. They got some other okay-ish running backs right there. I know a lot of people are high on the freshman Dontavius Braswell as well. Who actually, did I take him in our BTR dynasty? Not sure. I don't think I did. I think somebody sniped me on him. Anyway, I'm rambling. Sorry, y'all. This is what happens when you get me to talk past 9 o'clock at night. I think the only reason why I like Dakereon Joyner is the wide receiver eligibility. Otherwise, I probably wouldn't touch him that much. What about you?
I mean, we're all. I think we're just all. Realistically, he's a very end of the draft type guy. He's got some nice flexibility. He to me is one of those like keep a keen eye on him early in the season. Because how do they actually use him? Because if they do actually use him as a running back, it almost feels like he's a lock for 15 touches a game, right? Even if it's just 12 carries and 3 catches, like there can be some value at 229, 230. Like there's some legitimacy. Maybe he is like a goal line type of option because of the flexibility. What about like from a dynasty standpoint? I like Lenoris Sellers a good bit. He got pretty big. He got some Bojangles in him.
Big.
But what about Harbor, the tight end? That's the true freshman, Jared.
Their usage with Jaheim Bell last year kind of really put me off, and it's part of the reason why I should have brought this up with Joyner. It's part of the reason why I'm a little bit hesitant with Joyner as well, because they make all these promises when they have these like uber athletic guys of like, oh, we're gonna get him touches all over the field, and then Jaheim Bell comes out, he's fine for a couple of games, but at the same time, like you're watching, like, really? This is like the uber creative way that you're planning on getting him the ball? Like, it doesn't seem like you're really using him to his max potential. Just throw the ball down the field to them. Like, just do what Florida did with Kyle Pitts a couple of years ago. I do like that Harbor got the tight end eligibility, unlike certain Deuce Robinson, Deuce drafters. But I think for the most part, I'm skeptical about the ceiling there. I actually do like Trey Knox going into this year, though, because again, connection with the tight end coach there coming over from Arkansas. Trey Knox was a former receiver.
Yep.
And I think that, Wells needs somebody else to take some shots away from him. So I think Knox will end up being a pretty big part of the offense this year. So not a bad pick later in your drafts if you're looking for tight ends.
Okay. So we're going to give Jared a minute here to think about it. But Andrew, what's we haven't done this more recently. What are you most confident in with the SEC?
I shouldn't have put it out there earlier because now's the perfect time to declare that.
Do it. Say it again.
Raymond Keaton starts over Dante Thornton.
Okay. So, Jared, do you feel good about something? Or you want me to go?
You go ahead.
Oh shoot, I don't know what mine's going to be. Well, I would say, I mean, if you want to go real soft, I think Peyton Thorne is going to start, which is a huge pain in the ass. I really, really like Raymond Davis, and I'm taking him a ton of drafts. I think he's a super valuable asset, 5th to 7th round. He's going to get carries. I think that offense will be better, which is funny because like everybody was supposed to be in on Will Levis. They have 3 very capable receivers. I think they'll move the ball. I think Leary is a good enough quarterback to keep that offense moving. And ultimately, like Raymond Davis showed that I'm fairly sure he showed that he can be valuable in the passing game, or at least not a 0 in the passing game. So I think Raymond Davis is a super valuable asset, like 5th to 7th round option. I'll do that every day, all day, and twice on Sundays.
Let me actually say something. I'll answer the question instead of just saying what I wanted to say because I wanted to say it a second time. But what I'm most confident in, I'll say Justin Robinson goes first, 650 and 7.
Okay. The 7 helps because 650 is not interesting. The 7 does help.
Yeah.
Jared, you've had some time. What do you think?
I know I was kind of wishy-washy on him earlier, but Carson Beck is a Heisman finalist this year.
Oh, nice.
I can believe it. I mean, ultimately, Georgia's going to win 12 games, 11 games.
Yep.
What happens in that scenario? Quarterback or running back are there. I think the committee is there. What's? I don't want to speak for you. So, Jared, what's your thinking in that?
I think that if Stetson was able to make it to there last year, Carson Beck, a higher chip recruit, Georgia going into their potential 3rd championship in a row, the storyline is going to be there. Carson Beck, the guy who's waited his turn for forever, probably passes for more yards than Stetson did during the regular season last year. Hopefully more touchdowns as well, which might help his fantasy output just a little bit. I think, again, if Stetson made it there last year, I think Carson Beck will be back there again this year. Do I think he wins it? Don't think so.
I think that's totally fair. Alrighty. Well, appreciate you hopping on, Jared. Of course, in typical Jared fashion, we went longer than we have in all the other episodes.
I would say you guys contained Froton, which I give you mad props for.
I don't know how we did it.
No, it's because I had to like go home. That was
we had to jet
from not work, from being somewhere other than work.
Yeah. So the great thing is we really did have a great time chatting with you. We appreciate you hopping on with us. Jared, real quick, 60 seconds. Talk about Campus2Canton, what you're doing, where everybody can find you real quick.
Yeah, find Chasing the Natty on podcast and YouTube. Just look it up. You'll find it pretty easily there. In terms of what we got going on, again, we got the home field discount, so check that out, 15% off home field, Campus2Canton. Check out the CFF guide, only $20. Breakdowns on all 133 teams, as well as a ton of player profiles, schedule analysis, things like that. Everything you need there for that. And then in addition, got some awesome drafts coming up. We got the FSGA first ever college fantasy football draft going on the Better Sports Network next Tuesday, live on Better Sports Network. So check that out, hosted by Eric Froton. And then a couple weeks from now, I'm sad that neither of you boys are going to be there. Fantasy Football Expo. We got the Kings Classic, 3rd year in a row, live draft, this time in the Hall of Fame. It's going to be awesome. Y'all check out those streams whenever they come out here soon.
That's dope.
Awesome. Well, sweet. Well, yeah, we appreciate you hopping into being a part of all those drafts and kind of sharing what you're hearing and seeing and what you're believing in and all these different shows. And we're looking forward to the season. We're a month away. I mean, literally, 32 days away. So we're almost there, guys. But hope everybody enjoyed it. That's the SEC conference preview. And we'll round it out with another special guest next week or the week after for the MAC. So we'll talk soon, guys. Thanks.